Autumn had just begun, and the weather was changing nicely. The air felt cool and refreshing, with a gentle breeze that made it perfect to be outside. In my neighborhood, the days were chilly, and I loved seeing the leaves turn bright colors like red, orange, and gold. This colorful change was one of the reasons why I loved fall. I enjoyed the cool air and the beautiful sights of nature around me. Last year was no different. When October came, I felt excited. I wanted to make my home look festive for Halloween, so I went out to buy decorations before work. I happily picked up orange lights and spooky decorations, imagining how lovely my house would look when I was done. But that day didn't go as planned. A coworker called in sick, and my boss asked me to stay late to help out. I wanted to go home and start decorating, but I had to stay at work. By the time I left, it was already 7:00 p.m., and I felt disappointed. I hurried to my car, looking forward to finally getting home to decorate. The sun had set, and it was getting dark outside, but the streetlights and my car lights helped me see the way. When I got home, I quickly jumped out of the car and grabbed the decorations. I started hanging the orange lights on the bushes in my front yard, feeling excited to make everything festive. Just as I was getting into it, I noticed a man coming around the side of my house. At first, I thought he was a neighbor, but he walked up to me without saying anything, which felt rude and made me uneasy. I took a deep breath and said firmly, "Hey, you're on my property. Can you please leave?" He looked to be about 40 years old, had short brown hair, and seemed calm, but there was something about him that felt aimless, like he didn't care. Even though I tried to ignore him, I still felt uncomfortable. As I continued to hang the lights, I saw that the man hadn't left. He was now standing across the street, wandering around and looking at me a few times. My heart raced, and I felt scared. I decided to go inside, hoping that being indoors would make me feel safer. I had no idea who he was or why he was near my house, and it worried me. After closing the door, I tried to forget about him. I made dinner, hoping that cooking would help me relax. Then I settled in my cozy living room to watch TV, trying to distract myself. While I was upstairs enjoying the show, I suddenly heard a strange sound from downstairs, like something sliding across the floor. I paused the TV to listen, but the noise stopped quickly. Normally, I wouldn't think much of it, but after my strange encounter with the man, I felt uneasy and decided to check it out. As I walked down the stairs, I turned on the lights, expecting everything to be bright. To my surprise, all the lights were off, and I was sure I had left them on. I felt a wave of panic as I turned on the overhead light and listened carefully. It was quiet, except for the wind softly whistling through the open windows. I took a deep breath and walked to the back of the house, where I noticed that the sliding door was wide open. My stomach dropped as I realized that the sound I heard might have been someone opening that door. I felt frozen in place. Should I run outside or go back upstairs to grab my phone? I was scared and didn't know what to do. With my heart racing, I called out, "Hello, who's there?" My voice felt small in the quiet house. I looked outside but didn't see anyone. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a shape in the other room, almost hidden in the dark. I gasped, realizing I had seen him. Suddenly, he rushed toward me. Without thinking, I ran out the door, feeling adrenaline pump through my body. I quickly glanced back at him as I ran, but I was sure it was the same man from earlier. I sprinted through my backyard, my heart racing as I heard his footsteps getting closer. I finally reached the nearest house and banged on the door, shouting for help. Thankfully, they opened the door quickly, and I rushed inside, feeling safer. As I looked back, I saw the man standing in their yard, just staring at me. We called the police, but by the time they arrived, he had disappeared into the night. Later, I learned that he had broken the lock on my door earlier while I was at work and had tried to sneak back in that night. If I hadn't heard the sliding door or noticed him lurking in the dark, I don't know what might have happened. My family owns a large piece of land filled with tall trees and nature's beauty. At the edge of this property, they built a cozy cabin where we can escape from the busyness of everyday life. The cabin feels much more isolated than the main house, which is where everyone usually gathers for meals and family activities. This year, I decided to visit my parents and siblings at the end of October. Since the main house was packed with family members, I chose to stay in the cabin for the few days I would be there, looking forward to some quiet time. On my first day at the property, I parked my car at the main house because there wasn't a road leading directly to the cabin. I only packed a light backpack with a few essentials since I planned to stay for just one night. The air was crisp and cool, a perfect reminder that fall was in full swing. Around 5:00 p.m., my family finally gathered together for the first time in a while. We enjoyed a delicious spread of food and drinks, sharing stories, and catching up on everything that had happened in our lives since we last met. It was wonderful to see everyone and reconnect, but it was also tiring to talk for so long. After a few hours, feeling worn out from the excitement, I announced that I was going to the cabin to get some rest. I grabbed my backpack, said my goodbyes, and stepped out the back door into the cool evening air. The trail to the cabin was narrow and winding, surrounded by trees that seemed to whisper in the gentle breeze. It took about 10 minutes to walk, and I loved being surrounded by nature. However, I didn't think about how dark it would be on my way back. Without any lights, I had to use my phone's flashlight to see the path ahead. A little way down the trail, I suddenly heard a stick snap behind me. I turned to look, but my phone's light was weak and didn't show much of anything. I brushed it off, thinking it was probably just an animal, and kept walking. Just a few seconds later, I heard it again. This time, it felt like something was following me, and an uneasy feeling began to creep in. "Who's out there?" "Alex, I know it's you." I called out, hoping it was just my brother playing a prank on me. But deep down, I knew if it were really him, he would be laughing right now, not trying to sneak up on me. I felt my heart start to race as the tension inside me grew. I picked up my pace, hearing leaves crunching under my feet as I hurried toward the cabin. I didn't want to turn around. I was too scared to see anything behind me. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, or maybe I had just had too much to drink at dinner. Whatever it was, I just wanted to get out of the woods, so I rushed to the cabin, my footsteps quickening with each passing moment. Finally, I reached the cabin and hurriedly unlocked the door. I stepped inside and quickly locked it behind me, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. I tossed my bag on the floor and rubbed my face, trying to shake off the anxiety of what had just happened. Just when I thought I was safe, I suddenly heard a noise from the other side of the door. Someone was turning the knob, trying to get in. My heart dropped as I realized it wasn't just the wind. When they realized the door was locked, they began banging on it, not just knocking, but hitting it hard. The loud noise startled me so much that I nearly jumped out of my skin. The banging continued, and fear washed over me like ice water. With no other choice, I walked over to the narrow window beside the door to see who it was. Looking through the glass, I saw a man in a dark jacket and heavy boots, someone I had never seen before in my life. His expression was fierce, and I could feel a chill run down my spine. I only glanced for a second before his angry eyes shot over to me, and he started pounding on the window with a force that made my heart race even faster. Panic surged through me, and I felt trapped. Just then, I heard a voice yelling from the woods. The man paused for a moment, looking startled, and then suddenly ran off in the opposite direction, disappearing into the trees. About 30 seconds later, I looked out the window again and saw my brother, Alex, sprinting toward the cabin. He had spotted the man approaching me while I was walking, and after asking our parents if they knew him, he rushed over to check on me. To this day, we have never seen that man again, and we have no idea what he was doing on our property or why he was following me that night. It's a mystery that still frightens me. I often wonder what might have happened if Alex hadn't arrived just in time to scare him away. That night in the cabin reminded me of how important it is to stay aware of my surroundings, especially when I'm in unfamiliar places. Even though I love the beauty of nature and the peace it brings, I can't shake the fear of that strange encounter. Fall had finally arrived, and for me, that meant it was time for camping. The forests around here were turning bright yellow and orange, and the air felt fresh and crisp, with a light breeze blowing through the trees. I've always wondered why more people don't spend time outdoors during this beautiful season, but I wasn't complaining about having the trails all to myself. This year, I decided to hike a familiar trail that led to a campsite I knew was usually empty. It was nestled right in the heart of the forest. Normally, the campsite wasn't anything special, but with all the colorful fall leaves surrounding it, it looked stunning. When I arrived, I quickly unpacked my gear and started gathering sticks to make a campfire. Since it was around 4:00 p.m., I had a good 3 hours left before the sun would set, so I felt relaxed and excited about the evening ahead. As I walked around looking for dry sticks, I suddenly glanced up and froze. There, standing among the trees about 30 feet away, was a man just watching me with a chilling, blank stare. I couldn't believe my eyes. I kept my gaze fixed on him for a while, trying to figure out what he was doing. The rustling leaves in the wind made it hard to hear anything, and the whole situation felt uneasy and strange. Eventually, the sun began to set, and I managed to get the fire going. However, what I hoped would be a peaceful night quickly turned creepy as the forest grew darker around me. The campfire lit up my little area, but even though I thought the man I had seen was probably harmless, I still felt anxious. I kept looking around, sometimes convinced I could see a shadow lurking just outside my camp, but in the dim light, I couldn't be sure. About an hour later, the night turned colder than I expected, so I decided to climb into my tent and wrap myself in my sleeping bag to keep warm. The campfire gradually died down over the next 30 minutes, and I finally relaxed enough to fall asleep. But I don't think I was asleep for very long. I woke up suddenly, as if my eyes had opened on their own. For a moment, I lay there, unsure if I had woken up because of something, or if it was just a random moment of wakefulness. All I could hear were leaves rustling against my tent and the trees swaying gently around me. Then I noticed a distinct sound, the crunching of leaves, one after another. Someone was walking around outside my tent. Panic set in immediately. All I could think about was how vulnerable I was inside that tent, with no way to see what was happening or defend myself if something went wrong. So I did what I thought was my only option. I quickly grabbed my bag, unzipped the tent, and bolted outside. When I stepped out, I came face to face with the man. He was standing less than 5 feet from the entrance, and I recognized him instantly by his dead, empty stare. My heart raced, and fear gripped me. The most unsettling part was that he didn't even move. He just stood there, staring at me as if I were prey. I turned and ran into the woods without thinking. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I needed to get away. It was pitch black, and the wind howled around me, mixing with the crunching leaves under my feet, which made it hard to hear anything. I honestly couldn't tell if he was chasing me or not. Thankfully, I stumbled upon a part of the trail I recognized even in the dark. From there, I quickly followed it back to the road, my heart still pounding in my chest. When I finally reached the road, I felt a mix of relief and fear. I never went back for my tent. The thought of that part of the forest scared me to my core. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I truly believe that man intended to harm me that night. It's just a gut feeling I can't shake. Either way, I'll never go camping in those woods again. The beautiful colors of fall have forever been tainted by the fear of that encounter, and I now prefer to enjoy the season from a safe distance.